Let's continue with our coverage, and the elderly population still struggles under the pressure of modern living and harsh economic times. The government's cash transfer program for older persons has not been entirely successful. This week, Kenya marked International Day of Older Persons, whose theme was resilience in a changing world. Fatia Noor spent some time with the elderly persons for this report.
Eunice Wamboi is originally from Nyeri County. She lives in the sprawling Kibra slums where she sells groceries to feed her family.
Shida ile ilinileta hapa, mzee wangu alikufa, nikaona sana sina mbele wala nyuma, nikaona nitafute kazi ndio nikuje kulea watoto. Niliona sasa watoto wangu nikikataa kufanya kazi hawatasoma, nikakuja ndio nifanye kazi niwalee na wasome.
Even at her age, the 68-year-old says she has to work in order to put food on the table. Her main responsibility, a mentally unstable son. She says his condition developed from an untreated bout of cerebral malaria.
Mmoja anafanya kazi lakini mmoja ni mgonjwa, aligonjeka. Huyu aligonjeka malaria ile ya cerebral malaria. Sasa tunakuanga na yeye na mimi ndio ninamtafutia dawa, kumpatia chakula, kila kitu mpaka nguo. Sasa niliona nikikataa kufanya kazi na hana tegemeo, mzee wangu alikufa. Nikaona atateseka sana na siwezi kumutupa kwa sababu ni mgonjwa.
In 2007, the government introduced the Older Persons Cash Transfer Program to provide regular cash to poor and vulnerable people. Eunice says she is yet to receive the cash.
Bado miaka mbili juu alisema ati mpaka 70. Na mimi ninaomba Mungu kama wanaweza kuteremusa wafikishe 65 ndio mimi nipate.
However, the eligibility cash transfer introduced by the government states that for one to receive the 2,000 shillings monthly, one should be 65 years and above and not 70. The situation is similar even for those living in elderly homes. Daudi Murungi lives at the Kariobangi Chesire home.
Tuliandikwa watu kupewa pesa. Tumekaa rais wetu. Sababu tulimchagua na tulimchagua kwa upendo. Ajaribu kuangalia wasee. Wasee iko na taabu kubwa sana. Hata kama kungewezekana, serikali ianza kuwa imejenga boma kubwa ya kupumzika wasee. Hata kwa hii pesa waingia kwa masifu. Waone hawa masifu wanapatia wasee pesa ama wawati.
Speaking at the Kibra Daycare Center for Elderly Care, Miot Council of Elders Chairman Major Retired John Say encouraged the senior members of the community by reminding them their roles in the society.
Sisi ni dhahabu. Tuna maana sana katika society. Society yeyote ambaye haina wazee, unajua hiyo society si kwamba itakwisha tu, lakini ina laana mbaya sana. Iko na laana. Kwa hivyo uti wa mgongo wa nchi yetu ya Kenya, not the professors in the university ambao wanafundisha wajukuu wetu, lakini ni nyinyi wazee, sisi wazee.
According to the 2019 population census, the elderly population of 65 years and above are 1,870,493. That is around 3.9% of the total population, an increase of 538,220 from the 2009 census.
As the world marks the International Day of Older Persons today, the most senior citizens here in Kenya are urging the government not only to support them by giving them basic shelter, but also support them in terms of financial capabilities. This has led to many of them trying to struggle to fend not only for themselves, but also for their families. Fatia Mohammed Noor, KTN News. All right, and in studio we have Pauline Makwaka, who is the Executive Director at the Senior Women Citizens for Change, SWCC. We look at the plight of the elderly persons in the country. Karibu sana to the program, and thank you for being here.
So, thank you so much.
Yes.
For your welcome.
All right, most welcome. So, let's begin with the senior women citizens for change, for instance, we've seen complaints and from the elderly persons saying they're not being taken care of, not just with the provision of shelter, but also financial assistance. Is this the reason probably why the SWCC was founded, to support the elderly?
That is one of the reasons, because I went around the country and I did a lot of research just to find out the challenges of senior women citizens for change. And I had a reason why I started Senior Women Citizens for Change.
Yeah.
Not that I discriminated men.
Exactly.
But I found out that the senior women were on the ground. They were the caretakers. They were looking after children they were looking after grandchildren whose daughters and sons had died because of HIV and AIDS. And I had tears in my eyes because I found out that they had no economic power. They had no money, and the children lived hand to mouth. If the elder woman had to get food, and I remember one day in one of the sublocations in Western Kenya, the elder woman was going out looking for food, and she had 23 children whom she had to look after.
So her own and grandchildren.
The elder woman was over 60 years. And then the children, when she brought the food on the table, the children ate the whole food, and the old woman could sleep hungry. So that touched me. And also, something that touched me, gender-based violence. The elderly women were being violated. Domestic violence in the family, sexually abused, and physically they were beaten, and no one ever talked about it. So what I did, I started making sure that create awareness. Went to Nairobi slums, went to Western, and talked to the elderly women and told them we have rights. We have to come out, or else we shall be beaten. And most of them are dying. And then the inheritance issue, that is cultural in Western. Some of these people who are coming to inherit, the elderly people who are being, the elderly women who are being forced to be inherited. And you could find out that they were not after looking after the children. They were after the property which the husband had left. So it was like, what? This is a violation of rights. So I started embarking on the rights of elderly women.
When was that?
And I went around telling them human rights are elderly women's rights. The community, we must stand and voice out. And I started empowering them, giving them a lot of information, saying that we have to attend even the chief's barazas, because it is through the chief barazas that we shall hear things that the government has come up to help us, to empower us. And then I started getting some help from development partners. The first time we addressed were, what can we do to have some economic empowerment to the older people? They don't need to move too much. We had goats, and I bought native goats and gave to them. But you know, if you have nothing behind, you will not be able to really look and sustain your economic issues. So these old women had nothing. I had told them, give a goat to me. If you have a goat, let it produce and hand it over to another. It worked. but most of them sold
Yeah.
the goats because they are actually living in poverty. So my development partners also said, can we give you the dairy goats? And I remember I bought dairy goats from Embu and went, because the programs mostly are in Western Kenya. I went in a lorry with about 100 goats,
Yeah.
female and men.
And which year was that?
This was 2012.
2012.
Yes,
So
around 2012 is when I was dealing with goats. That's when I really started addressing the issues of...
yeah, and why I'm asking is because we have the government cash transfer program that was started by President Kibaki, the late administration. How is it enough? How is it helping the elderly women, especially in the society? Because it's been ongoing. President Uhuru, again, when he took office, he continued with the same program. And many people would imagine that it's sufficient in economically empowering the elderly in the society.
First of all, I thank the government
Yeah.
to have realized that it's a beginning to address the economic empowerment to the elderly. But I had a problem because whenever I was going to the ground, I could see lines and lines of older women and men. They left their houses by 4 o'clock in the morning and they were hungry and they were standing. And I thought, no, this is not a good plan. But I did not give up. I went to our sub-county and talked to them, told them, please, you can see what is happening. The elder women and men could bring the money in the house, but there was a shock. People were knocking at their doors and stealing away the money.
Exactly.
Even their own children, they were taking the money from the older people. And so the elder people could remain without anything. So I even went to the centers where this money was being given. And I remember I went in Kolomani to the place where the older women and men were getting money.
Yeah.
Do you know what happened? Those who are giving the money were putting a lot of money, change, a lot of change.
Yeah.
2,000 like this.
Yeah.
So they were putting some money away so that when the elderly person sees a lot of change, could assume
It's a lot of
that
money.
she has a lot of money.
Yeah.
But reaching home, she could find either 500 shillings are off.
Or even 1,000
So
shillings.
that was a problem also for the old people to
And it's
address.
still a problem even today that they are given the money, but it doesn't even benefit them. So how best, as part of this community, how best do you think that the government should deal with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The government has moved a step.
Yeah.
My old man, my husband, my late husband, was getting money from his, he had ID. So he had just to go to the bank and put his ID, especially Equity Bank, put his ID and he received the money. He was getting 2,000. Now the problem here is the caregivers. Those people who are entrusted to take care of these old people. Because some of them cannot move.
Yeah.
They can't go long distances. So they could go and take money for them. I have an example of my own because I have programs in Nairobi and I was going home and I had a caretaker. Whenever I used to go home, my husband wants to talk to me, but the caretaker was there. Unataka, what do you want to tell mama? What? And then my husband was also afraid. So I realized very late that this man was taking the money on his behalf.
All right.
But he could not give the services of that money to my old man.
Yeah, and Pauline, pardon me for cutting you short. We have to cross over to State House. I hope and pray that we'll have time to come back and conclude on our conversation. But we want to cross over to State House, Nairobi, where the Kenya Kwanza leaders, right now it's Kimani Ichung'wah is speaking, and today they